The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before Ilara's eyes as she guided her small craft away from the collapsing world of Nebula Prime. Her violet skin glistened with nervous sweat, four-fingered hands gripping the controls tightly. In the passenger seat, her young daughter Nyx whimpered softly, her large, silver eyes wide with fear. "Hush, little one," Ilara whispered, her voice trembling despite her efforts to remain calm. "We're going to be okay. We just need to get far enough away." Behind them, their home planet crumbled, great fissures of angry red splitting its surface. The cosmic plague, a virulent disease that had swept through their star system, had finally reached its destructive crescendo. Ilara and Nyx were among the last to escape, a small craft carrying the desperate hopes of a dying civilization. As they pushed further into the inky blackness of space, Ilara's mind raced. Where could they go? Their species, the Lumina, had always been isolationists, shunning contact with other civilizations. Now, that isolation had become their undoing. With no allies to turn to, they were truly alone in the universe. A sudden alarm blared through the cockpit, startling both mother and daughter. Ilara's hearts raced as she scanned the readouts. The cosmic plague had weakened their ship's hull during their escape. They were losing power, and fast. No, Ilara muttered, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Not now, please, not now." Nyx clutched her stuffed toy, a soft representation of a luminous star beast, tightly to her chest. "Mama, what's happening?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. Ilara forced a smile, though her eyes betrayed her worry. "It's just a little turbulence, sweetie. Nothing to worry about." She turned back to the controls, desperately searching for a solution. The ship's database flickered to life, presenting a map of nearby systems. Most were uninhabited, barren rocks floating in the void, but one, a small blue and green orb, showed signs of life. Earth, the database called it, home to a species known as humans. Ilara hesitated. The Lumina had long ago detected the presence of humans, but had chosen to keep their distance, deeming the species too volatile and unpredictable. But now, with their options dwindling and their ship failing, it seemed they had no choice. "Hold on tight, Nyx," Ilara said, plotting a course for the third planet in the Sol system. "We're going on an adventure." As their ship hurtled through space, Ilara tried to recall everything she knew about Earth and its inhabitants. Humans were a young species, only recently venturing beyond their own planet. They were diverse in appearance and culture, often at odds with one another. But they were also known for their resilience, their ability to adapt and overcome challenges. The journey to Earth was fraught with danger. Twice, they narrowly avoided detection by other spacecraft. Each time, Ilara held her breath, praying to the cosmic spirits that they would remain unseen. Nyx, sensing her mother's tension, remained unusually quiet, her silver eyes taking in the wonders of space around them. As they approached Earth's solar system, Ilara began to pick up transmissions from the planet. Strange languages filled the cockpit, a cacophony of sounds that made little sense to their Lumina ears. But among the chaos, Ilara sensed something familiar: hope, fear, love, anger. Despite their alien nature, humans seemed to experience emotions not so different from their own. "Mama, look," Nyx exclaimed, pointing out the viewport. Earth loomed before them, a beautiful blue marble suspended in the darkness of space. Ilara allowed herself a moment of awe. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said softly. "That's going to be our new home, Nyx." But as they entered Earth's atmosphere, their troubles were far from over. The ship, weakened by their long journey and the lingering effects of the cosmic plague, began to shake violently. Warning alarms blared once more as they plummeted towards the planet's surface. "Hold on," Ilara shouted, struggling with the controls. She managed to slow their descent, but it wasn't enough. They were going to crash. In those final moments before impact, Ilara reached out and pulled Nyx close, shielding her daughter with her own body. I love you, she whispered, closing her eyes as the ground rushed up to meet them. The ship struck the earth with a thunderous crash, carving a deep furrow in a remote forest. For a long moment, all was silent save for the hiss of cooling metal and the gentle rustle of disturbed leaves. Then, from the wreckage, a small violet hand emerged. Ilara pulled herself from the ship, cradling an unconscious Nyx in her arms. She looked around, taking in the alien landscape of tall trees and unfamiliar plants. They had survived, but their ordeal was far from over. As the first rays of Earth's sun peeked over the horizon, Ilara realized that their greatest challenge lay ahead. Somehow, they would have to find a way to survive on this strange new world, hiding in plain sight among its dominant species. With a deep breath, Ilara took her first step on Earth's soil. "We're here, Nyx," she whispered to her sleeping daughter. "We're safe for now. And somehow, we'll make this work, I promise." As she ventured into the forest, leaving the smoking remains of their ship behind, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Little did she know, their arrival hadn't gone unnoticed. High above, a satellite had captured their fiery descent. In a government facility thousands of miles away, alarms were already beginning to sound. The Lumina had arrived on Earth, and nothing would ever be the same again. The dense forest canopy provided some cover as Ilara stumbled through the unfamiliar terrain, her daughter Nyx still unconscious in her arms. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents, rich earth, fragrant plants, and something else, something distinctly alien to her Lumina senses. Every snapping twig and rustling leaf made her flinch, her large eyes darting nervously from shadow to shadow. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting dappled light through the leaves, Ilara's strength began to wane. The crash had taken more out of her than she'd initially realized. She needed to find shelter, somewhere to rest and tend to Nyx's injuries. A sound in the distance caught her attention, a rhythmic roaring unlike anything she'd heard before. Curiosity walled with caution, but the need for help won out. Cautiously, she made her way towards the noise. The trees thinned, revealing a sight that took Ilara's breath away. A road, smooth and black, stretched out before her, and on it, strange metal contraptions sped by, faster than any ground vehicle she'd ever seen on Nebula Prime. "Cars," she whispered, recalling the term from the ship's database. This was human technology, far more advanced than she'd expected. As she stood at the forest's edge, paralyzed by indecision, fate intervened. One of the cars slowed, then pulled to a stop on the shoulder of the road. A figure emerged, a human, Ilara realized with a jolt of fear and excitement. The human, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes, approached slowly. "Are you all right?" she called out, her voice laced with concern. "Do you need help?" Ilara's mind raced. The ship's language module had given her a basic understanding of English, but speaking it was another matter entirely. She opened her mouth, struggling to form the unfamiliar words. "Help, please, my daughter." The woman's eyes widened as she looked closer, taking in Ilara's alien appearance. To her credit, she didn't scream or run away. Instead, her expression softened with compassion. "Oh, you poor things. Come on, let's get you somewhere safe." Before Ilara could protest, the woman was guiding her towards the car. "I'm Margaret," she said softly. "And don't you worry, I've seen enough sci-fi movies to know that not all aliens come in peace. But you too. You look like you need a friend more than anything." As Margaret helped them into the car, Ilara felt a mix of relief and trepidation. They were putting their lives in the hands of this strange human, but what choice did they have? The journey passed in a blur for Ilara, her eyes wide as she took in the rapidly changing landscape outside. Forests gave way to fields, then to clusters of buildings that grew denser and taller. Finally, they pulled up to a modest house on a quiet street. "This is my home," Margaret explained as she helped Ilara and the still unconscious Nyx inside. "It's not much, but it's safe. Now, let's see about getting you two fixed up." Over the next few hours, Margaret proved to be a godsend. She tended to their injuries with gentle hands, her medical knowledge. She was a retired nurse, she explained, proving invaluable. Nyx finally stirred, her silver eyes blinking open in confusion. "It's okay, little one," Elara soothed, holding her daughter close. "We're safe." As night fell, Margaret sat with them in her cozy living room, a steaming mug of tea in her hands. "So," she said softly, "want to tell me your story?" Elara hesitated, then slowly began to speak. She told Margaret of Nebula Prime, of the cosmic plague that had devastated their world. She spoke of their desperate flight across the stars, of the crash that had brought them to Earth. Margaret listened without interruption, her expression a mix of awe and sympathy. When Elara finished, she set down her mug and leaned forward. "You've been through so much," she said softly, "but be not alone anymore. I'll help you however I can." Elara felt tears welling up in her eyes, a very human reaction she realized with surprise. "Thank you," she whispered. "But why? Why help us?" Margaret smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "Well, for one thing, it's not every day you get to help a couple of aliens. But more than that, you're refugees. You've lost everything, and you're just trying to survive. How could I turn my back on that?" As Elara and Nyx settled in for the night, in a spare bedroom Margaret had hastily prepared, a sense of cautious hope began to bloom in Elara's chest. They had found an ally, someone willing to help them navigate this strange new world. But as she drifted off to sleep, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were far from over. Somewhere out there, she was sure, others had noticed their arrival, and not all humans would be as welcoming as Margaret. The challenge of survival on Earth was just beginning, and for Elara and Nyx, the greatest test of their lives lay ahead. The weeks that followed their arrival on Earth were a whirlwind of new experiences for Elara and Nyx. Margaret, true to her word, became their guide to human society, patiently explaining everything from the intricacies of human cuisine to the baffling concept of reality television. But beneath the excitement of discovery lay a constant undercurrent of fear. Every day, Elara scanned the news, dreading to see reports of their crash or sightings of strange violet-skinned beings. So far, there had been nothing, but she knew it was only a matter of time. "We need to blend in," Elara told Margaret one evening, after Nyx had gone to bed. Is there a way to make us look more human?" Margaret pondered for a moment, then smiled. "I think I might have an idea." The next day, Margaret introduced them to her niece, Zoe, a talented makeup artist for the local theatre. Zoe's eyes went wide when she saw Elara and Nyx, but to her credit, she quickly composed herself. "Okay," Zoe said, clapping her hands together. "This is going to be my greatest challenge yet. Let's make you two the most convincing humans this side of Hollywood." Hours of experimentation followed. Zoe worked tirelessly, applying layers of specialized makeup to hide their violet skin, crafting prosthetics to alter the shape of their features. By the end of the day, Elara and Nyx stared at their reflections in awe. They looked human. "It's not permanent," Zoe warned. "You'll need to reapply it daily. But it should fool most people, at least at a glance." Armed with their new disguises, Elara and Nyx began to venture out into the world beyond Margaret's home. Their first trip to the local supermarket was a sensory overload. The bright lights, the cacophony of sounds, the dizzying array of products on the shelves. Nyx, ever curious, wanted to touch and taste everything. "Mama, look," she exclaimed, holding up a brightly colored box. "Can we get this?" Elara squinted at the label. "Cap'n Crunch? I'm not sure that's suitable for our dietary needs, little one." Margaret, who had accompanied them on this first outing, chuckled. "Oh, go on. Let her try it. Being a kid on Earth isn't complete without a sugar rush now and then." As the days turned to weeks, Elara and Nyx slowly began to acclimate to their new life. Margaret helped Elara secure a job at a local greenhouse, where her natural affinity for plant life, a common trait among the Lumina, made her a valuable employee. Nix, meanwhile, was enrolled in the local elementary school, where her quick mind and natural curiosity quickly made her a favorite among her teachers. But the challenges were far from over. Every day brought new risks, new potential exposures. A scraped knee on the playground that revealed Violet's skin beneath the makeup. A moment of excitement when Nix's eyes glowed silver, drawing startled looks from her classmates. Each incident was a stark reminder of the precarious nature of their existence on Earth. One evening, as Elara helped Nix with her homework, a news report on the television caught her attention. Continuing investigation into the unidentified object that crashed in Oakwood Forest last month. Officials remain tight-lipped, but sources suggest that the military has taken a keen interest in the site. Elara felt her heart's race. They were getting closer. "Mama." Nix's voice pulled her back to the present. "Are we in trouble?" Elara forced a smile, running a hand through her daughter's hair, now a warm brown thanks to Zoe's expert coloring. "No, little one, we're safe. We just need to be extra careful, okay?" As Nix nodded and returned to her homework, Elara's mind whirled. They had found a measure of peace here, a chance at a new life. But how long could it last? How long before their luck ran out? Later that night, after Nix had gone to bed, Elara sat with Margaret in the kitchen, a cup of chamomile tea, which she had grown quite fond of, warming her hands. "They're getting closer," Elara said softly, her voice tight with worry. "What if they find us? What if they want to hurt us?" Margaret reached across the table, placing a comforting hand on Elara's arm. "Then we'll face it together," she said firmly. "You're family now, both of you, and family protects each other." Elara felt a lump form in her throat, overwhelmed by the human's unwavering support. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." As she lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, Elara found herself torn between hope and fear. They had found kindness on this strange planet, had begun to carve out a life for themselves. But the shadow of discovery loomed ever larger. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new risks, but it would also bring new joys, new discoveries. And for now, that would have to be enough. Elara closed her eyes, letting the soft sounds of the Earth night lull her towards sleep. Whatever came next, they would face it together, two Lumina refugees and the humans who had become their unlikely family. The adventure was far from over. The crisp autumn air carried a sense of unease as Elara walked Nix to school. Their disguises were flawless as always, thanks to Zoe's continued help, but Elara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every passing car, every stranger's glance seemed to hold potential threat. "Remember, little one," Elara said, needing to adjust Nix's backpack. "If anyone asks too many questions." "I know, Mama," Nix replied with a reassuring smile. "I'm just a normal human girl." Elara's heart swelled with pride and worry. Nix had adapted to Earth life with remarkable speed, but the constant need for secrecy was a heavy burden for one so young. As Nix disappeared into the school building, Elara turned towards the greenhouse where she worked, but a commotion down the street caught her attention. A group of official-looking vehicles had pulled up outside the local police station. Curiosity overrode caution, and Elara found herself drifting closer. She caught snippets of conversation as men in dark suits conferred with local officers. Satellite imagery confirms. Crash site yielded unusual readings. Potential extraterrestrial activity in the area. Elara's blood ran cold. They were here. The hunt had begun. She hurried to the greenhouse, her mind racing. They needed to leave, to find somewhere safer. But where? And how could they disappear without raising suspicion? Her boss, Tom, noticed her distraction. "Everything okay, Ellen?" he asked, using the human name she'd adopted. Elara forced a smile. "Yes, just family matters. Nothing to worry about." The day crawled by, each minute an agony of anticipation. When her shift finally ended, Elara rushed to pick up Nix from school, fighting the urge to run. They were halfway home when a black SUV pulled up alongside them. The window rolled down, revealing a stern-faced man in a suit. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice coolly professional. "We're conducting an investigation in the area. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Ilara's heart pounded. She tightened her grip on Nix's hand. "I'm sorry," she said, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "We're in a bit of a hurry. Perhaps another time." The man's eyes narrowed slightly, but he nodded. "Of course, have a good evening." As the SUV pulled away, Ilara resisted the urge to run. They walked home at a brisk pace, Nix sensing her mother's tension and remaining uncharacteristically quiet. Margaret was waiting for them, her face grave. "I saw the news," she said as soon as they were inside. "They're calling it a multi-agency task force. FBI, CIA, even NASA. They're searching for, well, for you." Ilara sank into a chair, the weight of their situation crashing down on her. "We have to leave," she said softly. "We can't put you in danger any longer." Margaret's expression hardened. "Nonsense. You're not going anywhere. Not alone, at least." "But—" "No buts," Margaret interrupted. "I told you you're family now, and family sticks together." Tears welled in Ilara's eyes, a mix of gratitude and fear. Nix hugged her mother tightly. "It's okay, Mama," she whispered. "We're strong together, remember?" As night fell, they gathered in the living room, speaking in hushed tones. Margaret's niece Zoe had joined them, along with Margaret's brother, Robert, a former military man with a network of trusted contacts. "We need to get you out of town," Robert said, spreading a map on the coffee table. "I've got a friend with a cabin in the mountains. It's isolated, off the grid. You should be safe there while we figure out our next move." The plan came together quickly. They would leave at dawn, taking back roads to avoid main thoroughfares. Zoe would provide new disguises, making them look like a typical human family on a camping trip. As the others finalized details, Ilara slipped outside, needing a moment alone. She looked up at the night sky, at the stars that had once been her home. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of their situation, the loss, of fear, the uncertain future. But then she thought of Nix, of Margaret and the others who had risked so much to help them. She thought of the kindness they found on this strange planet, the new life they'd begun to build. Ilara took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. They would survive this. They had to. For Nix, for the future they hoped to build, for the bridge between two worlds that they represented. As she turned to go back inside, a flicker of movement caught her eye. In the shadows across the street, a figure stood watching. For a heart-stopping moment, Ilara thought they'd been discovered. But then the figure stepped into the light. It was the man from the SUV. He looked directly at Ilara, and in that moment she knew. He knew what they were. The man held her gaze for a long moment. Then, to Ilara's shock, he gave a small nod and walked away, disappearing into the night. Ilara stood frozen, unsure what to make of this development. Was it a threat? A warning? Or something else entirely? One thing was certain, their time was running out. As Ilara hurried back inside to rejoin the others, she knew that the real challenge was just beginning. The hunt was on, and the future of two worlds hung in the balance. The pre-dawn sky was still dark as Ilara, Nix, and Margaret loaded the last of their belongings into Robert's old pickup truck. Their disguises were perfect. Zoe had outdone herself, transforming them into the picture of an ordinary human family heading out for a camping trip. "Remember," Robert said, his voice low and serious, "stick to the back roads. If you see any checkpoints or roadblocks, turn around immediately. Don't take any chances." Ilara nodded, her grip on the steering wheel tight. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything." As they pulled away from the curb, Ilara caught sight of a familiar figure in her rearview mirror. The man from the SUV was watching them leave, his expression unreadable, but he made no move to stop them. The first few hours of their journey passed in tense silence. Nix dozed in the backseat, while Margaret kept a vigilant watch for any signs of pursuit. Elora's mind raced, replaying every interaction, every close call they had since arriving on Earth. They were halfway to the mountains when disaster struck. A popped tire sent them limping to the side of the road, the truck listing dangerously. "Stay in the car," Elora instructed, her heart's pounding as she stepped out to assess the damage. She was so focused on the flat tire that she didn't notice the approaching vehicle until it was too late. The black SUV pulled up behind them, and Elora's blood ran cold as the man from the night before stepped out. This was it, she thought. They were done for. But the man's next words surprised her. "Looks like you could use some help," he said, his tone casual but his eyes intense. Elora stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Margaret, sensing the tension, joined her outside the truck. The man sighed, then spoke quietly. "My name is Agent David Chen. I know what you are, and I know you're running, but I'm not here to capture you." "Then why are you here?" Elora asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Chen's expression softened. "Because I've seen the reports, studied the evidence, and I've come to believe that you're not a threat. You're refugees just trying to survive. And I want to help." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Margaret stepped forward. "Why should we trust you?" Chen smiled wryly. "You shouldn't. But right now, I'm your best chance at getting to safety. There's a roadblock 10 miles ahead. They're checking every vehicle." Elora's mind raced. Could they trust this human? The agent of the very organization hunting them. But what choice did they have? "What do you propose?" she asked cautiously. Chen outlined his plan quickly. He would escort them through the roadblock, using his authority to bypass the checks. Then he would lead them to a safe house where they could regroup and plan their next move. It was risky, but it was their only option. With Chen's help, they changed the tire and got back on the road, the SUV following close behind. As they approached the roadblock, Elora's heart pounded so loudly she was sure the soldiers would hear them. But Chen was true to his word. With a flash of his badge and a few quiet words, they were waved through without inspection. Hours later, as the sun began to set, they arrived at a small, nondescript cabin deep in the woods. Chen ushered them inside, quickly securing the perimeter. "We should be safe here for now," he said, finally allowing himself to relax slightly. "But we need to talk about your long-term plans. The task force isn't going to give up easily." As they settled in, Chen shared what he knew. The government was divided on how to handle the situation. Some, like Chen, believed in peaceful contact. Others saw the aliens as a threat to be contained or eliminated. "There's a faction within the government," Chen explained, "scientists, diplomats, even some military personnel, who believe that peaceful contact with extraterrestrial life is not only possible but necessary for humanity's future. We've been working in secret, preparing for a day like this." Elora listened, hope and skepticism warring within her. "What are you suggesting?" Chen leaned forward, his eyes intense. "We want to help you, not just to hide, but to live, to be the bridge between our worlds. It won't be easy, and it will take time, but we believe it's possible to change minds, to show that we can coexist peacefully." As the night wore on, they talked strategy. Chen's group could provide protection, resources, and eventually, a platform to tell their story. But it would mean stepping out of the shadows, taking an enormous risk. Nix, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. "We should do it, Mama. We can show them that we're not scary, that we can be friends." Elora looked at her daughter, marveling at her bravery and wisdom. She turned to Margaret, who nodded encouragingly, then back to Chen. "All right," she said, her voice steady despite her racing hearts. "We'll do it. We'll trust you." As they finalized their plans, Elora felt a glimmer of hope she hadn't experienced since leaving Nebula Prime. They were no longer alone in their struggle. They had found allies in the most unlikely of places. The road ahead would be challenging, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But for the first time, Ilara allowed herself to believe that they might not just survive on Earth, but thrive. That they might, in their own small way, change the course of human history. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, Ilara stepped outside, breathing in the crisp mountain air. A new day was beginning, and with it, a new chapter in their incredible journey. The hunt was still on, but now they were no longer merely the hunted. They were pioneers, ambassadors, the vanguard of a new era of interstellar cooperation. And they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The following months were a whirlwind of activity, fear, and cautious optimism. Agent Chen's group, which called itself Project Harmony, worked tirelessly to prepare for the moment when Ilara and Nyx would reveal themselves to the world. They moved frequently, staying in safe houses scattered across the country. Each location brought new challenges and experiences. Nyx, ever adaptable, treated it like a grand adventure, eagerly learning about each new place they visited. Ilara spent countless hours in debriefings, sharing what she knew of Lumina culture, technology, and history. Scientists hung on her every word, while diplomats and policy experts strategized on how best to present their existence to the public. Margaret remained by their side through it all, a steadfast presence that kept them grounded in the midst of chaos. Her unwavering support reminded Ilara daily of the best qualities humanity had to offer. As autumn gave way to winter, tensions within the government reached a boiling point. Rumors of the aliens' presence had begun to leak, and public speculation ran wild. The faction opposing peaceful contact grew more vocal, pushing for aggressive action. "It's time," Shen announced one crisp December morning. "We can't keep this secret any longer. We need to control the narrative before someone else does." The day of revelation dawned clear and cold. Ilara stood backstage at a hastily arranged press conference, her heart pounding. Nyx clutched her hand, eyes wide with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Remember," Chen said softly, "just be yourselves. That's the most powerful statement we can make." As they stepped out onto the stage, the room erupted in gasps and exclamations. Cameras flashed, questions were shouted, but Ilara focused on staying calm, on being the face of her people. "People of Earth," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "We come to you not as invaders, but as refugees, as friends. We seek only peace and a place to call home." What followed was a grueling 2-hour session of questions, explanations, and impassioned pleas for understanding. Nyx charmed the audience with her innocence and curiosity, while Ilara's dignity and intelligence challenged preconceptions about alien life. As they left the stage, exhausted but relieved, Chen met them with a smile. "You did it. It's not over, not by a long shot, but you've given us a fighting chance." The days that followed were a blur of interviews, meetings with world leaders, and public appearances. The response was mixed. Fear and suspicion from some quarters, fascination and hope from others. But slowly, surely, minds began to open. Scientists eagerly collaborated with Ilara, exploring the advances lunar technology could bring to fields like medicine and environmental protection. Nyx became a symbol of interspecies friendship, her playful interactions with human children melting even the hardest hearts. There were setbacks, of course. Protests, security threats, political opposition. But for every voice raised in fear, there seemed to be 2 raised in support. 6 months after their revelation, Ilara stood on the balcony of their new home, a secure compound that served as both residence and cultural exchange center. Nyx played in the garden below, laughing with a group of human children who had come to visit. Margaret joined her, wrapping an arm around Ilara's shoulders. "You've come so far," she said softly. "Both of you, how does it feel?" Ilara smiled, her eyes misting slightly, like a dream. A beautiful, terrifying dream. As they watched, a small spacecraft descended from the sky, the first official diplomatic mission from Lumina. After Ilara and Nyx's revelation, they had been able to send a message to the scattered survivors of their people. Now, slowly but surely, Their civilization was rebuilding, with Earth as an unlikely but welcoming ally. "Mama, look!" Nyx called out, waving excitedly as the ship landed. "They're here." Elara took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. There was still so much work to be done, so many challenges to face. The integration of their peoples would not be easy or quick. But as she looked at Nyx, at Margaret, at Chen, and all the others who had risked everything to help them, Elara felt a surge of hope. They had done the impossible. They had found not just survival, but acceptance. Not just a hiding place, but a home. "Come on," she said, taking Margaret's hand. "Let's go welcome our people to their new world." As they descended to the garden, Elara realized that this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The story of the Lumina on Earth, her story, Nyx's story, was just starting. And whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, two species united in hope for a brighter future. The sun set on this chapter of their journey, painting the sky in brilliant hues of purple and gold. And as darkness fell, the stars came out, no longer distant and unreachable, but a promise of adventures yet to come. Elara looked up at those stars, then down at her daughter, playing happily with her human friends. And for the first time since leaving Nebula Prime, she felt truly, completely at home. The universe, it seemed, had plans for them after all, and Elara couldn't wait to see what came next.